Hey everybody, welcome to the Pollen Trackers campaign update for December of 2022 and January of 2023. Welcome back to the campaign. Today I'm going to be giving you some updates on the project and on the science we've accomplished with your measurements. And then I'm going to go into some of the things that you can do to get ready for this year's coming Pollen Trackers campaign. So first, I wanted to give a quick recap for folks who are new to the project. The point of pollen trackers is to create pollen forecasts for Juniperus ashii, which is one of the most infamous allergenic pollen producing plants in the United States. So what we're doing is we're going out and we are collecting data on the timing of pollen release for these trees so that we can create models that will result in better pollen forecasts, help people to take steps to protect themselves, such as knowing when to stay inside or close their windows, things like that, and also to give people the information that they need in order to take medication ahead of time so it reaches full efficacy before they are exposed to Juniperus ashii pollen, the cause of cedar fever. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of what we have done over the last few years. This is now, let's see, we have so far collected data in 4 calendar years, and we've had a total of 85 participants contribute data to the project. Folks have taken a cumulative of over 21,000 observations of trees. That is a lot of trees, and this has been done at 109 sites over Texas. So each of those times that you measured these ash juniper trees, they went into the National Phenology Network database. And I want to start by just saying thank you for all of that effort. It's been a lot. You've gone out, you've collected data, often several times a week on several different trees, and we really appreciate it. There is so much that we have learned from the work and the effort that you have put into this, and we could not have done it without you. So thank you for contributing your time and effort into this project. I wanted to also let you know that this has been such a success that we've been talking a lot with the National Phenology Network and some of our other partners, and we're considering taking this to the next step and working with a few other species of trees and also trying to expand this to a national level. So thanks for all the work that you've done, and keep an eye out for our ideas about expanding the Pollen Trackers program. And you can see this, this fancy new logo in the bottom right of the screen here. So again, look for more words about us on that soon. But for now, we're going to keep it on the ash juniper trees. So I wanted to tell you a little bit more about some of the things that we've learned from your measurements. These maps here in panels A and B show the soil moisture in a couple of different years. The bluer areas are wetter, the redder areas are drier, and then those symbols are where some of these observations are from. And you'll notice, oh, and I should mention that kind of circle you see on the right, that half circle, hopefully you can see my mouse here. That's, so Austin's up here, San Antonio's down here. This is the Edwards Plateau that you see outlined here. And one of the things that we've been seeing so far is that the places that are drier over in the western side of the Edwards Plateau, they've been releasing their pollen a lot later in the year than the places that are a little bit wetter. So this is really useful information for us. And so one of our big findings is that the timing of pollen release on that kind of seasonal scale, it's well predicted by soil moisture. And there's also variation of several different weeks across the state. So that's pretty cool information. And with it, we can begin to extrapolate the timing of the pollen cone opening across the season. And that's what you're seeing in this animation here. Um, over You see this kind of wave of pollen cones opening starting over on the western side of the Edwards Plateau, where there's so many of these ash juniper trees. And as the season goes on, uh, that wave of pollen cone opening expands over to the west. And I should note that each of these colored pixels are places where there are ash juniper trees. Um, and and this pollen cone opening season extends from approximately the mid to late December over through until early February or so. Um, so this is pretty cool. We now have some good ideas about the timing of pollen cone opening, and that's in part from your work. So cool stuff. Um, However, there's one other thing that we need to do in order to create these predictions of airborne pollen concentrations, and that is we need a little bit more information on in exactly what environmental conditions, what the weather is like when pollen is being released. And so that is one of the measurements that you all take. That's that thing where you shake the twig a little bit and see how much pollen comes on out. That is exactly the kind of information that we need a bit more of. And so I want to show you first a little bit about what it is, what some of the things are we can do with that. So let me show you some preliminary results here. On the x-axis is vapor pressure deficit, and you can just think of that as how dry it is, like how much water is the atmosphere sucking out of these plants. So a really dry day would have a high vapor pressure deficit. And on the y-axis there is the lag in days. And what we're finding from our preliminary results is that when it's really dry out, there's a lot higher chance for um, for high amounts of pollen to be released. And that's what this bar shows as it goes to kind of orange there. That indicates that when it's really dry on a particular day, then there's a lot more pollen release. But what we can also do is extend that back to previous days. And one of the things that we're finding is that it's when it's been really dry over the last week or two, that is when the pollen release is happening the most. And we can also do this with everything else from temperature to sunlight and other forms of information about how humid and wet it is. And we're beginning to get some sense of how that affects the timing of pollen release. And so just want to show you this little figure here, which shows the timing, the modeled timing of pollen release at a single site a little bit north of Austin. And here, each of these lines is a particular tree, and on the y-axis is the probability of high pollen release. And so you can begin to see that there's both a lot of variation between trees here, and also variation over time. So some really neat stuff that we're beginning to untangle, thanks in part to the measurements that you are taking. So this season, our plan is to collect more of this data so we can finish making these models and get these pollen predictions finalized. And so I'm hoping that you all are going to go out there and collect more data this season. And please get in touch with me if you have any questions. So what I'm going to do now is just go through some of the intricacies of recording this data, just in case it's feeling a little rusty for you. After all, it's been almost a year. Oh, and I should also note, it can be really useful to see these pollen cones up close when you're taking measurements on them. So if you think it would be useful for you to get a hand lens so you can see them in higher detail, just let me know. I'll send one to your address. So just drop me an email. Here it is. Dan Katz at cornell.edu. So send that along to me, and I'll send you a hand lens through the mail. And it really lets you get see those pollen sacs within those pollen cones in full detail, which is pretty neat. Now, some of the other measurements that we'll be taking again, same as the last few years, are whether, let's see, are the percent of cones that are open on a tree. So you'll be looking at a few different cones, and you'll be looking to see if there are gaps in there, in between those scales. So that top pollen cone here, that's an example of a cone that's opened, and you'll see that most of the cones here on this twig on the right in the circular photo have also opened, but there are a few hiding there where there aren't any gaps and they haven't released yet. Now, one of the other big measurements that we're taking is pollen release. And the way that we're doing that is, well, we're shaking the twigs a little bit on the tree we're taking data on, and we're seeing how much pollen is being released. If you see any being released, you then have to categorize that into little, some, or lots. I want to give you an example of each of these. So here is what it looks like when there's a little bit of pollen being released. So you can just see a few grains coming out here and there, just a little bit of something. Whereas with some pollen release, it's like you see these faint tendrils coming off of it. So it's a bit more, and then for lots of pollen release, it's like a heavy smoke coming off of the tree. So that's what it looks like when a lot of pollen is being released. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this update, but please, if you have questions, drop me an email. Always happy to answer questions, chit chat with you. I'm going to be in Texas for the field season, or at least for a couple of weeks of it. So yeah, drop me a line. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And oh, if you have any pictures of you taking measurements, let us know. I'd love to send out some photos of folks in our update emails as the season goes. All right. Hey, thanks again. Talk to you later. Bye.